Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back with another video, and today we're going to talk about this week's Batman book, which was Batman Detective Comics issue number 976, which is part 1 of the Batman Eternal story arc, which is the final story arc on Jane Tynan's The Forest Run, which will end roughly around May. And I think I'll kind of reserve my thoughts on Tynan leaving maybe toward the end of the story arc, because I kind of want to see how this kind of wraps up. But I will say, with pretty much confidence, that I think the story arc will rack up pretty good. And for the very most part, even though Detective Comics has been kind of going through some peaks and valleys as of late, I think Detective Comics has been very solid since Rebirth and a huge improvement since the New 52. So anyway, this week we got the variant cover here done by Rafael Albuquerque, and we got the main cover here, which is done by Eddie Barrows. Eddie Barrows' art always scrumptious and delicious to look at, but we're actually going to use the variant cover here to go through the talking points. Now, I will say, for the most part, this issue, while it did bring up some interesting talking points, this really did just kind of serve as as I think, as a setup issue for how the rest of this arc is going to go. This really did just kind of help put things in place to kind of progress the story along as we move forward. And the one thing I will say that kind of going into this story arc, which kind of gives me a little pause for concern a little bit, is that this story arc in Detective Comics, ever since, you have to go back to, Batwoman. And I think it's the first issue that Marguerite Bennett and James Tynan did together. There was that one issue, no, I don't think it was Batwoman, I think it was still Detective Comics. It was like the return of Batwoman. And they kind of gave us a glimpse into the future of what really Gotham was going to look like in terms of Kate Kane's part in the colony, and really how it served as, at the time, a really sharp contrast of what we were getting with Batwoman Detective Comics. And I think also when you take into this, we also had the recent story arc with the crossover with Super Sons, Titans, and Superman, where we kind of had the Super Sons of the Future type thing, where we had the Tim Drake of the Future coming back, and even saw that again in Detective Comics as well. You saw things later on down the road in the future, and kind of articulating and tying in with things that are going on today. And the risk you run with running those future storylines, where you kind of put things in the future and you kind of bring it back in the present day, the end game's almost already laid out. So unless you really kind of go through the story and you really divert some things to really change the overall end state of the story arc, a lot of the stuff, I'm not going to say it's set in stone, but you kind of know what's going to be coming, which kind of robs some of the reading experience kind of go along with it. I mean, because some of the things you're seeing play out now, with what's going on in the future, again, some of that initial kind of response or excitement or even surprise you would normally get when reading it, it's kind of taken away, because you know what the end game, or maybe not even the end game, you know how the, back lack of a better term, how the battlefield is going to look in the future, and how people are going to be thinking, and how do I best say it? So how the pieces will be played on the chessboard. You kind of know what's going to be coming. So that's the risk you kind of run with that sort of storytelling. And you're beginning to see it as of right now, which that's kind of a bummer. And that's pretty much the main emphasis behind this story, or at least with the Tim Drake part of it, is that his big concern is trying to avert what he knows what's coming in the future. And in doing so, again, I'm not taking away the fact that James Tynion can do something where we can kind of divert and kind of alter that future timeline, but still kind of robs you a little bit. And in addition to that, there was another thing, and I'll get to it, which kind of rubbed me a little bit the wrong way because I really wasn't a fan of it when we saw it back. And I think it was with the Future's End, and even in Batman Beyond, during the DCU thing when Tim Drake was actually Batman Beyond. But we'll get there in a minute. But one of the things I really enjoyed about this story is really what starts in the beginning. And it's not really that I enjoyed it and it's like, wow, it's good. It's really brought up an interesting kind of food for thought in that when Cassandra is kind of reliving this experience that she had with Clayface, they kind of took out these human traffickers, or actually trafficking children. As she's sitting with Leslie Tompkins, kind of reliving this and kind of reflecting on how it made her feel. And at that time, she's actually saying it's the last time she felt she did something good. And Leslie asked her the important question of, well, if you think you were doing good, what about your friend Clayface? And she mentions the fact that, that I think he was trying to be good. But unfortunately, they killed him. And obviously, we all know what happened with Kate. And that's kind of like the driving force of what's going on with the split in the Bat family right now. But then she brings up the very good point. Then she says, but they still killed them. And then she says to Leslie, maybe one day they'll kill me too. And I really, that kind of stuck with me for a minute in that if you look at Cassandra, even going back to, the Batman and Robin Eternal, with the kind of the rift that she had with her father and obviously her upbringing, you almost want to parallel it with Damian in that how he was raised and some of the bad things he did when he was growing up. She's kind of paralleling that same way. And while Bruce was able to kind of bring Damian around to at least see things in a newer way and help him mentally develop, as of right now, Cassandra has not mentally developed. Is not really the right word. Mentally recover, that might be a better word. But Cassandra's at a point right now, she's still kind of fragile in that she still hasn't really gone over the fact of what she did as a child and what the influence her father actually did. Because if you actually look at it, while Talia, what she did in Batman Incorporated was obviously evil. But if you look at, if you look at Robin, Son of Batman, when she came back, she kind of shows some kind of glimmer of promise to kind of maybe go back to where she was, back in the day, like the Neil Adams run. That she kind of can show some promise here and there. Right now, I don't think it's going to happen if you're reading Super Sons, but Cassandra's father was to the nth degree, and while he might have made the final sacrifice at the end of Batman and Robin Eternal, the impact that he had with Cassandra was still very troubling, and Cassandra still hasn't gotten the opportunity to kind of get past that. That's one of the things that Leslie says to Bruce after they finish up with this counseling session, for lack of a better word. Man, that's some horrible glare, and I'm sorry for that. In that she is just in a bad place right now. Man, I gotta do something with that glare. Give me one sec. And she might not be able to kind of help her out. And she's almost to the point where it's just, the damage just mightn't be too much for her to fix. And if Bruce is going to have to, if Bruce really wants to help her, he's got to do something really quick because she's kind of on the brink of breaking to the point of no return. And I always thought, it goes back to that thing where she said, maybe they'll kill me too, is that while I doubt they'll ever get that far, you can kind of see her logic in that. In that, there's a parallel between her and Clayface. I thought that was pretty interesting for James Tynion to bring up, because if you look at it, for what she did and back in her time, and what Clayface did back in his time, there's a parallel there, and she really can't see beyond that. So you can kind of see how this is really weighing her down mentally. And I always thought that, I mean, I always thought that, but I just thought that was a really interesting dynamic to bring up in this issue. The thing that really kind of struck me out in this issue, though, beyond the whole future thing, the Court of Owls is in here. And while I think it's awesome to have appearances from the Court of Owls pop up here and there, and with the Talons, I mean, specifically the Talons, I think they are a really interesting group of characters, and it's always nice to have that little new, kind of toy in the toy box to bring out every once in a while. But the Talons they're assassins, bottom line assassins. They get orders and they go out and the end state, they'll kill you, bottom line. And what they're doing here, they're trying to divert this cargo ship from going to South America in order to prevent it getting to South America, where they can kind of help out their local economy, and the court doesn't want that. They offer the crew a bribe initially, and I just see it as the court wouldn't, or Talons wouldn't just make a bribe. They would just take them out and prevent the ship from going to South America. So that, while it might be kind of a nitpicky thing, it's just one thing that kind of rubbed me the wrong way, in that this is kind of not really in keeping with the character. And it's really weird is that James Tynion wrote the Talon series back when, in New 52, back when it came out, right after like the Court of Owls. So I was kind of with that James Tynion kind of decided to go that angle, because again, it just didn't really ring true with the character in me. But ultimately what comes down is that we have Kate with Batwing and Azrael with help of the colony initially. Primarily, though, it's Kate, Batwing, and Azrael, who thwarts the core of the Talons' attack and prevents the damage they were going to do. And then after that, we have an interesting dialogue with Tim and Batman, in that what basically is happening is Tim is still persistent on really going after this Night Protocol thing. And this kind of really goes over the last issue we had, and kind of the aftermath, with what Batgirl really just breaking it down, saying, this thing isn't going to work, and the reason why it's really not going to work is that Batman has his own ulterior motive. And to come into that, Bruce is kind of shaken up a little bit, so he's really in the idea that Knight's Protocol thing, it's not going to happen. It's done. And coupled with that, this conversation he had earlier with Leslie Tompkins about, really helping out Cassandra, he's kind of reflecting on, did he bring Tim back too soon? And is he in the right place mentally? And should he help him out more? So he's kind of at this point where he's just budging. He's like, not budging. I mean, it's done. This whole Night Protocol thing, it's over. And I'll still incorporate the Bat family when I feel that it's necessary. But until then, hey, we're done. But Tim's persistent in not letting that happen. He's still referring to stuff in the future. That's kind of draws back the whole thing with kind of showing your cards early, what's going on in the future or what could happen in the future. And Tim, again, he's really persistent on making sure he sets the conditions to prevent that. But again, I don't know. It just to me, when you get into the whole future storytelling aspect, I think it's one of the drawbacks. I think this scene right here could have been really fleshed out a little bit more, and it could have had more of a deeper impact rather than keep referencing what's going on in the future. Tim he storms out and he's not happy, yada yada yada. But then we go back to the colony, and basically, again, what I was kind of saying, this issue is kind of really just setting, the pieces in play for how the rest of the story is going to go. You basically see officially that Batwing and Azrael agree to be part of this colony's effort. And what the colony's going to do now is that they're going to let Batman focus on Gotham, whereas the colony is going to be a bigger thing. Colonel Kane referenced the fact that they've been going after the court around the world for the longest time, and that's where their effort needs to be. And with this team, they finally were able to defeat these Talons with minimal casualties. And this is going to be the effort for this colony is going to be focused on the big picture, and they're just going to let Batman kind of go off on his own, in Gotham only. Which I did think that Luke and Azrael, they kind of, I don't want to say conceded too early, but I did think it was kind of like, okay, whatever, I'll join the team, great. I thought there would have been a little bit more resentment, especially since Azrael brought up the point that, hey, this feels kind of weird, Not too long ago, these people were trying to kill me, and then just real quickly, now we're going to be part of the same team. So, I don't know. That one, again, that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way, too. And then we get to the end. This is the thing where I'm kind of worried a little bit and how this story's going to go, because bringing in an aspect I'm not really a fan of. Now, but basically what's coming down to is you're going to see a partnership form between Tim and the General, Ulysses Hardin Armstrong. And what the Generals bring into Tim is the fact that, hey, we should work together here. We're actually friends in the future. Not really friends, maybe kind of work acquaintances might be a better term. And Tim's like, why? How do you know all this? And the General goes, hey, I know because I've seen it. And I have the tools. I'd be able to see what's going to go on in the future. And he references this thing at the bottom. You'll see a little thing right there. That's the brother's eye. Now, again, not really a fan of the Future's End story arc or the series, and then the Future's End, and there was one more what dealt with Earth 2. Future's End, there's one more. I forget. But really did incorporate this whole thing with the brother eye. And that really played into Batman Beyond during DCU, where when Tim Drake was Batman Beyond, well, basically, Brother's Eye really just corrupted the whole entire world, with the exception initially Gotham. And to me, I just wasn't a fan of the Brother Eye concept, and you can obviously just infer that it's going to have a major part of the story going forward. And then again, I say again, if you're looking at those other stories, the Future's End, what was that other Earth 2 weekly series that came out at the same time as, Batman Eternal, then you had the Future's End, and then there was one more, and I can't remember. But it was all dealing with the future, and how basically things were, kind of doom and gloom, catastrophic, whatnot. And you're seeing glimpses into the future, and if you're not really a fan of that kind of outcome, you kind of know where this thing could go, so it kind of leaves a little bit of a sour taste in your mouth. And unfortunately, I kind of got that as we kind of wrapped up this story. So all in all, the art in this by Javier Fernandez, I thought it was okay for the most part. The one thing I really didn't like as much with it was the facial designs. I will say this page in particular, Kate Kane, looked kind of butchy. Fernandez's flaw, I think, in this issue was really, again, just the facial aspects. Really wasn't necessarily a fan of it. Everything else I thought was nice. It's just, this one of Tim right here too. I just wasn't necessarily a fan. But all in all, I thought the art was pretty good. I did like that one that we actually had, the counseling session with Leslie Tompkins, which again, it's kind of like a running gag with some people, in that you never get a consistent kind of design for what Leslie Tompkins looks like. Sometimes she's really old, sometimes she's young, sometimes she has darker hair. This one, she looks like she's kind of like brown hair. I wish they kind of would fix that, but I did like this whole page layout here so we can do it without getting the glare. I really enjoyed that. I thought that was really clever in the one scene with Clayface. I thought this was well done too, just especially that top part. So, art for the most part is okay. You really can't complain too much other than the facial designs. But again, Detective Comics, it's not horrible, but it's just in a weird place right now. I don't know. It's been like this for quite a while. And I'm just hoping that Tynion kind of wraps up this last story arc of his so he can complete his run in a good manner. Because right now, again, I don't want to put too much stake in again because I think this issue was primarily a setup issue for the rest of the series or the rest of the story arc going forward. But I will say, first part of it didn't necessarily kind of hook me. In fact, a little worried. Again, because I kind of know what could be happening in the future. So, if I had to rank this one, average 2.5 out of 5, and I think it might even be a little nice. Probably maybe even a 2. I do think that initial dialogue with Leslie and Cassandra really did kind of save us. They really did, because that really was, I thought, really brilliant storytelling. Interesting, the dynamic for that one point for Cassandra to go, hey, maybe they'll kill me too one day. It kind of hit me strong a little bit, because that's definitely an interesting parallel to bring between her and Clayface and what could potentially happen to her, considering what she did in the past, her current mental state, and what she can potentially do. So, yeah, 2.5 out of 5, again, might be a little nice. But anyway, that was Detective Comics, issue 976. See if I can maybe crank out one more video this weekend before I wrap it up. See if I can do another trade. Got a couple other old Batman stories. So, we'll see. But anyway, hit me out in the comments below. We'll bat chat and go from there. So, until next video, take care.